they'd get letters at the newspaper that would say he, you know, talking
Mr.
about
Murdoch said
Mr.
this.
Murdoch.
Yeah.
Was a wanker. Mr. Murdoch was a bigger wanker when they found out that she was a woman.
Cool. You're doing it. Do you know what you're going to draw yet? Have you worked it out?
I thought I might draw a cat.
A cat? Okay.
Well, no. Yeah, I thought a cat. I don't want to draw a politician today.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. I was thinking that I would draw a politician. As I assumed that we were talking together, I would draw a politician. I was thinking about drawing Simon Bridges, mainly just because he's someone that I find quite funny to draw.
Yeah, you have him down pat too. You've got the way his mouth goes, sort of.
Like a rubbery bottom lip.
Sideways, yeah.
But I was thinking maybe this time, just to change it up, I was going to throw you a curveball and say, can you include your dog in the picture?
The dog.
Iris.
Yeah.
But if you're drawing a cat already...
No, I can do Iris.
Iris and...
Yeah, Iris and cat.
Okay, just to keep you on your toes, I thought that might be good. Yeah. A bit of a curveball.
Yeah. I was thinking about horses for you.
Yeah. Okay.
I was thinking about maybe Simon Bridges.
I can draw Simon Bridges.
As a centaur.
As a centaur? All right, let's do it.
I've been way meaner to you than you've been to me. I mean, I don't. No, you don't have to do that.
No, that's funny. I think that's really funny. I'll give it a go. Yeah. I can't promise that my horse legs is what I always have a problem with. I hate drawing horse legs. Yeah, the knees, they're so strange, but...
I found recently the trick with them is to give them quite thin ankles.
Thin ankles?
There's something if you have the legs...
Like knobbly knees?
Yeah, like knobbly knees and really thin ankles.
Okay. So, you're the editorial cartoonist for Stuff, the Sunday Star Times, the Dominion Post, the Waikato Times. You're the first woman editorial political cartoonist in New Zealand, and the 3-time reigning Cartoonist of the Year champion. How do you introduce yourself?
I usually say these days, it took me a long time to say that I was a cartoonist because I started quite late with cartooning. Were
you always a drawer? You're obviously an artist for a long time before you started cartooning, but did that start from when you were a kid?
Yeah, I used to draw a lot when I was little. I went to a school called Southland Tech, which was like the last of the technical college. You know, like the kids who went there, they were usually from a kind of poorer part of town and they were training to do trades mostly, you know.
And was that studying kind of technical drawing or
Yeah, I did technical drawing and I didn't take any of the, what did they call them? Home economics, home science. I didn't take any of those. I'm consequently very bad at all those things.
And did you, at that stage, did you think that would be your career would be drawing, or?
I think I had this fantasy when I was about 15, 14. I was going to leave Invercargill and one day I was going to come back in a little red sports car.
Okay.
And have a portfolio.
Right, okay, the portfolio was the thing.
Yeah.
And then the Wellington Media Collective I wanted to ask you about.
Yeah.
The Media Collective was doing posters for sort of activist groups, right? A sort of Springbok tour.
Yeah, it was originally set up to do that. The collective was like in this big old building in Marion Street in Wellington, and it was really rough, you know. It was like, had screen printing space, and there was a big bathtub for rinsing off screens and a dark room and some drawing tables and stuff. And mostly people came there to print political messages, like sort of posters about all sorts of things. It was a really happy place to work for me for a long time. Because I knew I was never well suited to an agency or to, being in a more commercial environment. So
Why was that? Just personality, or
it probably was personality. I remember at design school, in our last year at design school, it was quite a shock because we'd all been happily drawing and designing nice posters and that sort of thing.
Creative.
Yeah, and this guy
expression.
showed up from an agency who had been an agency, and all of a sudden it was about, but would it sell? And I remember that first day in class he had said, oh, let's draw a grid of who buys coffee. And without waiting for anyone to answer, he wrote housewife into the grid, and I started arguing with him and saying, no, that's not right, because, look at all of us. It's not housewives buying coffee at airplanes.
Yeah.
But he got quite cross with me. And so after that, whenever class started, he would kind of dismiss me at the beginning of the class by saying, of course, Sharon's going to argue with this, but, we're going to carry on regardless. So, yeah, I probably knew then that it wasn't
Just never
for me,
You were working for stuff as a designer before you were a cartoonist. Is that right?
And I used to live with a cartoonist in my 20s.
That was Trace Hodgson, right?
Yeah.
Did that make cartooning more appealing or less appealing, seeing someone actually doing it day to day?
I was really delighted by what he did, that I'd see it every day, and I think he was particularly good.
Oh, he's one of the greats, I think.
Yeah, I think he's one of the greats. And I was actually put off by seeing his work because I just thought, I can't even begin to match that. I think what it did in the end, what encourages me now, is, and it was something I heard Dylan Horrocks say, is about doing things your own way. You think there's all these rules about how you have to do it, and then I don't draw political cartoons like
your
most
style
people
is
do.
completely different to Trace's.
Yeah, and so you can do it your own way. There's not the rules you think there are.
I'm intrigued to see what pens you're going to use when you come to ink yours. I look at your cartoons often and think, how does she do that? I don't know what tools you use, but also the mix of what's analog and what's digital. It's not entirely clear to me. How you
It's not very clear to me either. It's I have these when I'm doing political cartoons. I use dip pens nearly always. And I think it's because they're scratchier and...
Yeah, there's something kind of blobby and scratchy about them. That's really nice.
And I quite like it because they're unpredictable. Or in my hands, anyway, they're unpredictable. So they don't look like my drawings because something unpredictable has happened, whereas I think I have a tendency to maybe try to be too controlled
if you're too
with
controlled,
and it
takes
kills,
the character out of it.
it kills the drawing. I do drawings in I have these sketchbooks. These are the best sketchbooks, and these are the best sketchbooks in the whole world. They were from Japan City. But I do like a really rough drawing, and just in...
That's in a biro.
Yeah. And then I quite often will photocopy it and then stick it on the light box and then just draw over that.
And that's just a steel nib that you're dipping into the ink.
Yeah,
Is that right?
I always used to dip it into the ink, and then I was talking to Anna Crichton, and she uses this Schminky. It's an acrylic ink. It dries quite quickly, which is really good for me because I'm usually working on a deadline, And this, it has the reservoir built into the back. It has a little metal plate that presses against the nib, so it holds the ink. I use that one all the time, and then there's a Hunt 101 nib, which is, I think,
That's a famous name. I've heard that in interviews with cartoonists before.
I think that's the Hunt one there, and that's the one. It's quite pretty. It's got the...
Oh, yeah.
And I keep an eye on Trade Me and look out for old handles to, if they come up.
Cool. What was the impetus for you to start doing political cartoons?
I was doing political illustration for a woman, Tracy Watkins, columns, but then I found I was taking them more in my own direction. Like I was kind of thinking of them as an independent thing around the theme of her column. And no
You
one
had
kinda,
something to say yourself.
Yeah,
It wasn't
that's right.
just
And nobody seemed to complain about it too much. And the Waikato Times editor, who had been running some of my
They're usually syndicated, right? The same.
yeah, he got in touch and he said, would I do theirs? Which was really neat. And so I was doing theirs, and then I would take mine in to show the guy who was the acting editor at the Dominion Post at the time, and he was kind of like, oh, you know. But then after 3 weeks, I think it was about 3 weeks, he said, oh, okay, well, we're going to...
Yeah, it seems incredible that you were under their nose for so long.
Yeah.
Without the organisation being aware of the potential that of what you could do.
Yeah, I think that's quite often the way it is, though, isn't it? When someone's in
Do you think,
the
especially
house?
so that you're a woman, that it didn't occur to them?
Yeah, well, probably. I mean, they probably wouldn't be looking at a woman to do it, because women just around the world, there's not many women.
Yeah, it's
And I don't
incredible.
even understand why, because women are interested in politics and they draw.
Yeah. From the start, you signed your cartoons Murdoch. Was that a deliberate thing to kind of not make it so obvious that it was a woman drawing?
Yeah. And people did assume it. They'd get letters at the newspaper that would say he, you know, talking
Mr.
about,
Murdoch said this.
Mr. Murdoch.
Yeah.
Was a wanker. Mr. Murdoch was a bigger wanker when they found out that she was a woman.
They'll be even madder, I'd imagine, the same type of readers that are writing to the paper. I remember you telling me a story at some stage that you would be mistaken for Murdoch's wife at functions sometimes.
No, what that was so funny, that we'd gone to this lunch and there was Bob Brocky and Tom Scott, and I think Dylan Horrocks was there, and there was various people, but...
Most of those old guard kind of...
Yeah, and we all filed in together, and by then I'd been cartooning for, you know, a little
few
while.
years by then,
Yeah. And Steve Bell and I were supposed to be speaking together a couple of days later at Auckland University, and so we were sitting next to each other, and Tom Scott at one point leaned across the table and he said to me, and I had met him before, but I'm quite unmemorable or something, but he leaned across and he said, well, you should start first since you're the guest. And I thought, oh, that's very civilised. And then he asked me how I was enjoying New Zealand.
Right.
And then I realised he thought that I
That you
was
were
Steve
Steve
Bell's
Bell's
wife.
So I bought a copy of your book along, and I've got a couple of bookmarks in it for a couple of cartoons that I thought might be worth just sort of looking at, and I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about your process
Love to hear me
behind them.
explain myself. Just, now count for
What
yourself.
were you thinking? What were you thinking?
I know, I get letters about that all the time.
Do you? Yeah, I'm interested to know how much feedback you get. Like, must be positive feedback as well as angry feedback, right? Or is it mostly people write in when they're annoyed?
No, I do get quite a lot of positive feedback. I think that's kind of there's the old-fashioned notion of that they're just a kind of antagonistic thing, but I think...
Yeah, traditionally they've been designed to provoke, which is not necessarily what you're always trying to do.
No, I think for me quite often they are about a kind of solidarity or even quite often a compassionate thing. You know, like you're saying, I see what's happened to you, I see what's
Yeah, I feel
going on.
like something that's really different about your work, and possibly it's to do with you coming from a woman's perspective, or possibly it's to do with your activist background, but I feel like they do very often come from a place of kind of empathy or being spoken sort of from the perspective of vulnerable people. Like this one is the one that I've always found really moving, the special treatment.
Yeah, and I think that some people maybe misunderstood it in that my mother is Māori. I got all the Whitey genes, but...
Is that your mum on your necklace,
yeah,
by the way?
that is my mum.
I noticed that before.
She's very lovely. When I drew that, I think sometimes it's hard to explain that when you're drawing, you have to use a lot of visual metaphors, you know. So I know that there was a couple of people got upset about that cartoon and said, I was saying that Māori were, you know...
Victims or...
Yeah, victims and beaten down, and that they were wandering around with missing teeth and all that sort of thing. And in fact, that wasn't what the cartoon was saying. It was using this sort of physical injury as evidence of a kind of... Yeah, as a metaphor for this psychic injury, like the injury of being colonised and all of the things. And it was because of that terrible... quiz, you know, the way it had been worded. What it did was it assumed special treatment, that they were already getting special treatment.
The other one that I want to ask about, which is not in the book, is that pat yourself down one just blew me away. Interested just to hear you talk about what's your sense of what your cartoons are supposed to do, or how you want to react in a situation like that.
I think there is a duty not to inflame something further. But there's also the duty to witness and kind of say what you've seen. And I don't think that you can be here and not see that we do have this really endemic racism and that we act like we don't, you know. I remember at one point when I first started doing cartoons and I had gone into work and I had seen a cartoon that had run in the paper. There was two old white men and they were following two Asian women down the road, and the cartoon said something like, oh yeah, we should not let the men in but let the woman in. It was, you know, it was kind of, I can't remember how the punchline of it went. And I went into work the next day and I was saying to someone, who approved that cartoon? Yeah. And they said, oh yeah, it was really funny. And then they said, you know, if you didn't always have a point to make, you could be funny as well.
Wow, okay.
And I think that was one of those experiences, actually, as a woman cartoonist, which was being put in your place.
Picking up on that a little bit, you don't seem like you feel like your job is to be funny, right? It's more to make a point.
I think I'm like you.
Yeah.
Like, I think I read somewhere where you wrote about... What did you say about that? You said about...
I personally, like, when I've done editorial, haven't been doing editorial cartoons much recently, but I never felt like my job was to make a joke. Like, it's not necessarily to make a joke. It's a visual, you know, it's like an opinion column. It's not. It's a place to say something. Yeah. And sometimes that thing is funny. Yeah. But I don't feel like a cartoon has to be funny.
No, the same. And of course, there's a lot of things that you cannot be funny about. You know?
Do you feel like, I know there's some cartoonists around the world that would say, you know, like, PC's gone, you can't make any jokes anymore, but I feel like that's not...
No, I don't think. And as well as that, a lot of those jokes are so fucking tired, you know, they're just tired. And you think, oh, well, how many more times are we going to laugh about that when it's not funny anymore and it's damaging people? I noticed that when Al Nisbet, who cartooned for the Christchurch Press, and there was a number of complaints about him, about his work, and I'm sure that a lot of people really loved it, but he did some terrible, you know...
Yeah, I think I probably made a few complaints about him, to be honest.
But someone was saying one of the things about him, they said you looked at them and you had the feeling that he didn't like anyone. Yeah. You know, there'd be very few people, even the politicians I don't like. There is something, when I'm drawing them, there is an affection Like there is affection for these people who they are kind of doing our work for us, you know, that they do this job that would be pretty punishing. And so even though it might appear like I'm completely taking the piss about something, there's some kind of, well, I hope it conveys some kind of humanity and an affection for foibles and for, you know, all the things that we all do when we're in them, you know.
Well, you're putting yourself in their shoes for a minute to draw them too. Like I find when I draw them, I have to think, how would he stand? How would she be walking? What are they wearing? What's their expression? You kind of become them for a second. You kind of act as them and become them for a second, right?
And it's very intimate. Like, drawing's really intimate, isn't it? Like when you're drawing someone, it is like you're touching them nearly. There's like this because you are kind of stroking the lines of their face and their body.
When I've met politicians in person and thought, I've looked at your nose for a very long time, it's kind of strange.
Like you feel like you know them a lot better than you do.
You often hear that politicians will put really nasty cartoons about them on the wall of their office, right? It's sort of a badge of pride to be like.
Well, I've never had, I don't think that that Judith Collins has ever bought one of my cartoons. And she has been one of my favourite people to draw, so I'm a little offended.
Who was your favourite to draw?
I'm a little offended.
Yeah, it seems like you enjoy drawing Judith.
Yeah.
You can tell in your drawings that you... Is there one drawing that you've done that you've, like any particular ones where you feel like you've absolutely caught the person? Like the particular ones you remember where you feel like you've nailed it?
There's a cartoon that's in that book that I've always really liked, probably no one else particularly noticed, of Judith Collins getting wrapped over the knuckles with the wet bus ticket. I mean, it's like this joke on an old joke. And Jerry Brownlee's been sent off to get something to punish you with, and he's going to trip off into the distance when he comes back. And I really I don't know why, but I like...
Got Judith in that one?
Yeah, I felt like I got Judith.
There was one that I remember of yours where you drew Bill English as a chicken. But I remember just, like, looking in awe, like, how did you do that? Like, there's something about it that's just like, it's just so him that it made me laugh out loud.
That'll do.
You all finished?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sort of.
Ready to roll? I'm looking forward to seeing this. You ready?
Oh, look at him. Oh, my God. You did capture him. He's got no pants on. You're probably the first person in the country who's drawn Simon Bridges with no pants on.
As a centaur.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I had to get feels like you can't draw a horse's tail without making some sort of John Key ponytail reference there somewhere.
And look at your perfect signature. My signature's so shit.
Well, show us then. I want to see this. Oh, look at that. Wow, that's so cool.
It is.
I love it.
Monroe and Iris in the mouth.
In the mouse. Amazing. That's so cool. Thank you so much for chatting today. It was really, really, really special.
It's been really fun.
Yeah, that's lovely to catch up. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.